October 14th, 2011, the iPhone 4S was released. It was the successor to the iPhone 4, which was infamous for dropping its cellular signal when holding the phone in a certain position. The iPhone 4S fixed that problem and ended up being a more refined version of the iPhone 4, which is what an S model should be. It was released on iOS 5 and was supported all the way to iOS 9.3.5, but it really shouldn't have. This is William from Wink Tech, and in this video I'll be going over the 4S, why it was one of the best iPhones, and how Apple failed it. First of all, let's go over the specs of the iPhone 4S and compare it to the 11 Pro just for fun. The 4S had the Apple A5 chip, 512 megabytes of RAM, starting at only 8 gigabytes of storage and going up to 64 gigabytes, a 1430 mAh battery, and a tiny 3.5-inch display with a resolution of 960 by 640, giving it a pixel density of 326 pixels per inch. These specs seem like nothing compared to the 11 Pro because they are, but back in 2011, this was some good smartphone hardware. The 4S allowed you to do things like use iMessage, play some games, and take 1080p video, which is quite good for a phone of that size, and it was honestly pretty powerful. The design was no joke either. Looks are obviously subjective, but this is honestly a really nice looking phone. It came in either black or white with a glass back and a stainless steel frame. Unlike most phones you see nowadays, the camera is flush with the back of the phone, it has two speakers at the bottom, and it has two circular buttons for the volume rocker, and it has the power button on the top rather than on the side. All of these design features make for a very industrial but elegant looking design, and feels very good in the hand. In fact, the design was so good that Apple sort of went back to this design with the iPhone X. With the stainless steel frame and glass back, the iPhone X actually resembles the design, but with all the more modern features and bigger screen size, of course. Talking about the camera, there's nothing really special here, although it was the first iPhone capable of recording 1080p video at 30 frames per second. It has an 8 megapixel sensor which is capable of taking okay photos in really good lighting conditions, but anything less will be very noisy and grainy photos. It certainly isn't very good for today's standards. If you compare the 4S with some of the features we have today, it seems very simplified and even a bit lackluster. However, this phone was released at a time when Steve Jobs still had influence on the design of the iPhone, meaning it had his applied philosophy of less is more. Some of the features we would consider essential today are non-existent on this phone, including touch or Face ID, fast charging, big screen, stereo speakers, etc. But using this device honestly feels kind of refreshing because of how simple it is. Steve Jobs thought it was the perfect size, and most Android competitors at the time had a bigger screen. The compact size made it easier to carry around and use the device with one hand. The only way to get into the phone was to swipe to unlock and put in your PIN. No fancy fingerprint or facial recognition with this phone. Honestly, it would make a great iPod to play or even stream music since it supports Apple Music and has a headphone jack unlike the modern iPhones. But there's just one problem, it's slow, I mean really slow on iOS 9, and that is where this phone falls apart. A while back when Apple accidentally signed the iOS 6 software for the iPhone 4S, I immediately restored my 4S to that iOS version, because I knew it was much better on that version. Shout out to 91Tech for posting a video about that process. When I restored it to iOS 6, let me tell you, it was buttery smooth. Navigating the UI was really fast, and of course it has that classic skeuomorphic design that is iconic of iOS 6. It was truly one of Apple's most polished iOS versions. Honestly, my plans at that point was to just use the 4S as an iPod since it had great performance and was portable. However, one day I booted it up and it went into recovery mode and there's no way to get out of it, unless I restored it back to iOS 9.3.5. Normally this wouldn't have been an issue because I could just restore it back to iOS 6 and all would be good, but the problem was Apple is no longer signing the software, so I couldn't get it back unless I used a jailbreak or something. That was a very sad day since I had to restore the OS that didn't run well at all with the 4S. This was an issue with all devices that used the A5 processor, it was just never meant to run iOS 9. Apple really failed the 4S in the sense that they didn't drop support on it with an OS that actually ran half decent. This is unlike the iPhone 5S, which went all the way up to iOS 12, which shockingly gave it a performance boost. Honestly, I would have really liked to see that with the 4S. I think it deserves to be left on iOS 8 so that it would be at least a little bit useful as an iPod, but unfortunately that isn't the case. Despite all of this, I still think that the iPhone 4S is one of the best iPhones for their time, in my opinion, and I'm glad that Apple brought back the design in a way with the iPhone X, which happens to be my personal favorite iPhone design. Well, that's about it for this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on the iPhone 4S in the comments below, and whether or not you think it was one of the best. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more content like this. Anyway, this has been William from Wink Tech, and I'll see you in the next video.